What's up, everybody? Absolutely beautiful Wednesday afternoon to you all. The Indiana Pacers last night in thrilling fashion took down the Milwaukee Bucks again and are moving on to the Eastern Conference semifinals against the Cleveland Cavaliers. The Boston Celtics took care of the Magic. The Pistons are making the Knicks work for it. And the Nuggets and Clippers series is absolutely amazing. But we're not here to talk about that. Today we are going over the AFC and the NFC South in the draft grades. We got 2 more days of that, and then on Friday will be the fantasy special looking ahead to the guys that are coming in to the league, who could have the biggest impacts, and I'll also be talking about the leagues that I have and inviting you to join me in some of the fun leagues and the Discord server that I have getting set up right now. But today, AFC, NFC South, what grades did they get? What did they screw up? And what did they get right? Here we go. All right, guys, here we go with the AFC South draft grades. Pull it up here. Boom, there we go. All right, so we start off with the Indianapolis Colts. This division really underperformed for what it could have done. And let's start with the Indianapolis Colts. The best pick of the draft, hands down, was Tyler Warren, the tight end from Penn State, who fell to them. Outrageous need. They do not have one that they really like, or they don't have one that can really get involved. Whatever it may be, Shane Steichen's offense really limits the ability for the tight end to be used outside of maybe a little bit, but we also have a quarterback that can't really throw them the ball consistently. So there's multiple factors into this. Tyler Warren's impact is going to be directly related to Anthony Richardson's success or Daniel Jones' success this year. There is no, it's not really a Brock Bowers effect because they're not purposely getting him the ball. Shane Steichen's offense, and I had this complaint with Frank Reich. Frank Reich didn't like having set lineups. Didn't like always having the same guys on the field. Well, you bozos, you're both going to be fired. While Tom Moore and Andy Reid and even Philadelphia with Sirianni and Detroit, they've got the same players on the field 80 to 85% of the time, and they're using the other 15% to rest them so they don't get overly tired. Because you have to get in a rhythm in the NFL. And Frank Reich had lost all of that, frustrated the crap out of me. And Shane Steichen kind of does the same thing, where he doesn't actually set up the plays to get the guys into a rhythm, and then Richardson just sucks as a quarterback with accuracy. So this draft, there were a couple primary concerns. Number 1 was tight end. Number 2 was offensive line, knowing that Braden Smith will be gone at the end of this year and potentially filling in that hole there at right guard for Will Fries. Defensively, it was definitely linebacker that was needed. Defensive line looked pretty solid based off of what we had. And obviously we signed, they signed the safety and the corner in free agency. So really it was linebacker, tight end, offensive line was the main focus. Their first pick, Tyler Warren, tight end, check. Second pick, JT Tuyumalau from Ohio State. Why? And I don't give me the crap with the best available, especially in this draft. In other drafts, you could convince me they just drafted best available. You could absolutely convince me of that in other drafts. Not this one. You cannot convince me of that in this draft. That was a purposeful pick over a right tackle or guard that you could have taken at that point. So the defensive line is relatively 6 deep right now. Congratulations. Still don't have any linebacking help in the middle. Now they did draft a corner from Minnesota. Then they drafted an offensive tackle in the 4th round, Jalen Travis. Now it's a 4th round pick. And I get it. 4th round picks have come out, and the Colts have done decent with 4th round picks. Are they going to pay Bernard Raymond, though? Like, we really need to be focusing on the future of what's going on. Chris Ballard is too arrogant to, actually think that he's believing this could be my last year, so, I better just go all in now. He's too arrogant. He's not that bright when it comes to that. His awareness is low. So I don't think that's the case. The pick wasn't bad, but you need more. DJ Giddens, the running back out of Kansas State. In this draft, I am not going to judge drafting a running back. It was so deep. Everybody should have drafted a running back. Riley Leonard, the quarterback from Notre Dame. I love this pick. Now, it's not a high grading pick, but I love this pick, and here's why. He can be a backup quarterback for 10 years. Riley Leonard is very smart. Riley Leonard is a fantastic scout team quarterback. He will be able to help the quarterback room with what he sees as he catches up to the offense. I absolutely love the Riley Leonard pick for this team. Whoever the future quarterback is, because I don't think it's him, and I'm not going to say that he's going to be starting. That's crazy. But I love a solid backup quarterback pick. Jalen Milroe to the Seahawks was a really solid pick, and we'll get to them tomorrow. But when you draft a backup quarterback, it's about mentally what they can do. Their awareness, their toughness, how they see and how they, pick up on things. Riley Leonard was a great pick for them. And then they got defensive tackle Tim Smith from Alabama and Hunter Wooler, the safety from Wisconsin. So I'm going to give them a B+, because they did. Tyler Warren, I think, is a huge help. That is an immediate starter, immediate impact player if Anthony Richardson can get them the ball. Now, when you move to Jacksonville, this is the one. They get a C+. Why? That trade was absolutely stupid. You gave up way too much to get Travis Hunter. Now, my thought is, because of how they did this, my thought is Cohen wants him on the offense as a receiver with Brian Thomas, which then, because of their second pick, they drafted Caleb Ransaw, the corner out of Tulane, in the 3rd round. I think confirms they're going to use Hunter on offense and play him specific plays on defense. That is my feeling based off of how they drafted. Now, they didn't draft bad. They drafted Wyatt Milliam, the offensive guard from West Virginia, offensive line help. Tuden, the running back from Virginia Tech, I thought was a little bit high. I would not have drafted him in the 4th round, especially with those other running backs that were sitting there. But then their 2 next picks, Jack Kaiser, the linebacker from Notre Dame, huge pick. I love that pick. Really smart linebacker. Jalen McLeod from Auburn, once again, a outside linebacker. He's a little bit undersized to be an edge, but he's smart. Then they got Ryan Lane. I love it when Navy guys are drafted. My dad was in the Navy. I'm a full-time Navy fan. In fact, I changed one of my fantasy team names to the midshipmen. I love it when Navy guys get drafted. And Ruyan Lane the third, the 5'11", 200-pound safety from Navy was. I loved it when they drafted him. They also got Jonah Monheim from USC, and then they drafted another running back, which I think is actually the better option, 6 foot, 204-pound LaQuint Allen from Syracuse. But you lost too much for me to give you a high grade. You had different holes. You filled in a couple of them. I like the 2 linebacker picks. You got a guard, and then you got a center later. But you lost too much. You lost way too much. You'd have a B grade if you just didn't make any moves and drafted Mason Graham like I kind of predicted. It looked like too big of a swing. I know he's going to learn for next year. I know he will. But the Jacksonville Jaguar GM is brand new. First time. They fired the assistant GM the day after the draft was over. It was like, I think maybe it was Monday. Come on. So for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I give them a C+ because they did fill needs, but they lost a ton in this draft for what their future is going to be. All right, the Tennessee Titans, I'm going to give a B+. They filled in different positions, and they gave Cam Ward a few other playmaking weapons. So they draft Cam Ward, number 1, no shock. And then they trade back, and they get Oladejo, the edge rusher from UCLA. Then in the 3rd round, they get Winston Jr., the safety from Penn State. Underrated, 6'2", 215-pound safety, I think fits beautifully in that defense. That could be an underrated pick for this Tennessee Titans team. Then they get Dyke from Florida, the wide receiver. Gunnar Helm, the Texas tight end. Then they get, I'm not even going to try to butcher his name, the wide receiver from Stanford, 6'2", 206 wide receiver from Stanford, who Stanford plays in the ACC now. And they have been on games. And in the games that you watch, even when they're getting blown out, Ellick is making plays and making some pretty good ones. So they get multiple extra weapons for Cam Ward. Then they draft Jackson Slater, the offensive guard from Sacramento State. Congratulations to him. Marcus Harris, the corner from California. And then Khalil Mullings, the running back from Michigan. To me, the only thing they really missed was I thought they would. It's not that they missed. I thought they draft a running back. This is Tony Pollard's backfield now. Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears own this backfield now. This is theirs. So they are going to be responsible for helping Cam Ward move forward. Tony Pollard's going to get the majority of the carries behind a very newly well put together, vamped offensive line. And I love where it is at right now. And then the final team, we're going to look at the Houston Texans. Why is it a B? Well, so here's the interesting part about this. It's a B because the players they got were really good. Like the trade they made with the Giants, I think really was a really smart trade. A second, a third, a future third. And they turned them into really good picks. Like, I have to give the Texans credit. They took what was a really small draft pick class because they didn't originally have those 2 extra picks and turned it into really something that helps solidify their team, but they're still missing the dominant offensive line. They didn't get enough offensive line. Offensive line is a dire need. You were horrible last year. They got first pick, Jaden Higgins, Iowa State wide receiver. This is a Green Bay Packers scenario. Here's why I'm saying that. Second pick, Ursiri, the offensive tackle from Minnesota. Love that pick. Beautiful pick. Third pick, Jalen Knoll, wide receiver, Iowa State. Getting the trend? You can't be injured. Fair or not, Tank Dell is injured. A lot. Nico Collins has been injured the last 2 years. John Michie has been injured. Christian Kirk, they got him from Jacksonville, but he has been injured. They drafted 2 rookie wide receivers to bring in to work with CJ Stroud. If Nico can stay healthy, and then these 2 guys end up taking over the second and third spot, I think the Texans will be outrageously happy. Big receiver, speed receiver. Exactly how you want your offense to be, and they still got Dalton Schultz at tight end. Then they drafted a corner, Jalen Smith from USC, another running back, Woody Marks from USC, don't blame him, speed, Jalen Reed, the other safety from Penn State. Then they drafted Graham Mertz, the quarterback from Florida. I like that pick for them. Once again, a solid backup quarterback pick. They drafted the defensive tackle from Rutgers, Keontae Hamilton. And then they drafted another tight end, Luke Lachey from Iowa. I give him a B. There wasn't enough offensive line. Fair or not, I know the wide receivers, because we just watched Tampa Bay give Godwin a huge deal coming off of another injury. Listen, the Patriots did the same thing to Diggs. But if you're a team like the Packers, the Texans, which I feel are the exact same teams, just one's got a lot better offense and one's got a lot better defense. They're eerily similar, but they're both dealing with a bunch of injuries and certain key issues that flared up last year. And for the Texans, it was the offensive line. For the Green Bay Packers, it was the defense that just eventually wore down. The Texans have to improve that offensive line. There's still Brandon Sharif out there. I still think they're going to end up signing 2 more offensive linemen. They've got to protect CJ Stroud. They have to get the offensive line correct this time. All right, next one, NFC South. Here we go. Tampa Bay Buccaneers get a B-. Why is that? Because you drafted Emeka Egbuka with your first pick. And like I said, don't give me none of the crap of best available in this draft. No. You sucked on defense last year. You are not a team winning 10 games that can just be comfortable going, yeah, it's okay if we run it back. We should be all right. No, you're not going to just be all right. You're not. You still needed another pass rusher. You could probably use some depth on the offensive line. You needed help at linebacker and corner easily. And you went with the receiver. You could have done what the Texans did, traded back and gotten multiple picks and looked at what the future may hold after you've got players that will be retiring shortly. But they went 2 wide receivers, 2 corners, 2 edge rushers. Now, I do like Benjamin Morrison, the corner from Notre Dame. I thought that was a really smart pick. I think he can go into the slot corner position immediately. Jacob Parrish, the corner from Kansas State. I think he's a dime type player. He could easily grow into more. And then they got David Walker from Central Arkansas, Elijah Roberts, the edge rusher from SMU. It wasn't that they're not bad, but you didn't take care of necessarily the Egbuka pick. Really just why? You crowded your wide receiver room even more with Jalen McMillan, Godwin, Evans, and now Egbuka. What are you doing? I mean, I know they like Cade Otton, but there was easily a way if you trade down. You could have also drafted Mason Taylor from LSU and really helped your team even more. There's just so much about how this draft played out. They waited for the edge rushers in the 4th and 5th round. Come on. And then you drafted Tez Johnson too, out of Oregon. I don't get it. I really think they're going to be wishing they didn't sign Emeka. It's a crowded wide receiver room. You can't get everybody the ball. It'll be wasted talent because Evans dominates with Baker. That's just the reality. Baker looks for Evans. He looked a lot for McMillan when Godwin got hurt. I just think it's too much. If you didn't want to really draft there, trade back. Jason Light's smart enough. He should know better. All right, the Atlanta Falcons. You see there we've got 3 A's. The final one's an A-. Why is that? Simply put, they drafted 2 edge rushers. They drafted 2 safeties. They went defense, 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 and their 7th round pick was an offensive tackle from Wisconsin. They drafted Jalen Walker. They drafted James Pierce Jr., both edge guys. Jalen Walker is a very typical 3-4 edge. James Pierce, I believe, is a 3-4 edge. He's more of a tweener edge. He can play end. How he holds up in some run schemes can be questioned, but he is a definite 3-4 stand-up edge. And then they got Xavier Watts, the safety from Notre Dame. Mentally smart. Loved that pick. Billy Bowman, the next pick, the 5'10", 192-pound safety, who I think can move to nickel corner from Oklahoma. Loved that pick too. The reality is they went and got the guys they needed to make their team better. All 4 of those picks were to beat the Buccaneers. All 4 of those picks were to beat the Buccaneers. And that's the only goal you have. If you're the Atlanta Falcons, you've got to win the division. Those 4 picks do exactly that. If they're healthy and they play the whole year, those 4 picks easily make the Atlanta Falcon defense 10 to 12 spots better automatically without playing a game. Because they've got legitimate pressure that'll go after the quarterback. They've got another smart safety next to Bates on the back end. They've got a solid nickel option. I love this for the Falcons. Absolutely great draft. Absolutely great draft. I did. I love this draft for the Falcons. It's about winning the division. They didn't play around. It was a defensive draft, and they got defense. Can't ask for anything more than that. All right, Carolina Panthers. They had issues on defense badly, but they've also got to build the nucleus around Bryce Young, and they did both. And I want to give Dan Morgan credit for doing what he did. 8th pick, a lot of people weren't sure where Tet was going to go. I predicted it, I said it, Tet makes too much sense going to the Panthers. Tet McMillan to the Carolina Panthers will be the wide receiver 1, and Xavier will be wide receiver number 2. They're giving Bryce Young every weapon he needs to see if next year they got to move off. This is the make or break year. You've got the weapons. This is the make or break year. Now, to make sure he's still in games, you got to get a defense. Well, they did that too. Drafting Nick Scorton, the 6'3", 260-pound edge rusher from Texas A&M. Then they got Princely Una. I'm just going to say Una because his name's way too dang long. But they got Princely Una from Mississippi. And both of those picks were to help the defense, which was last in it was easily the worst last year. Gave up points after points after points after points. Not good. Now, they added to the running back room. They signed Rico Dowdle. They drafted Trevor Etienne, the little brother of Travis. And then they went back to defense. Lathan Ransom, the safety from Ohio State, I think is a huge pick as the 3rd safety. Cam Jackson, the defensive tackle from Florida, the 6'6", 330-pound defensive tackle. Then they drafted a tight end, I believe a solid 2nd tight end next to Jatavian Sanders. Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame. And then they drafted Jimmy Horn's son, Jimmy Horn Jr., the little receiver, which I think is going to be returning kickoffs. And they can probably use him in some slot plays. I love this draft because it took care of needs all over the board. Your defense was bad, but you got a big target for Bryce Young. That Dan Morgan hit this draft out of the ballpark. I love that draft for them. All right, New Orleans Saints, and that is it. Here we go. Kelvin Banks, a pick, honestly A plus pick, because with Ryan retiring and the way that offensive line is, you've got to get your offensive line set. That's exactly what he did. Tyler Show, quarterback, Louisville, 6'5", 219 pounds. I am going to give Kellen Moore the benefit of the doubt. Tyler was drafted with the 8th pick in the second round. If Carr is hurt, and Carr is out, I believe Tyler will be able to start. I do not know the success, because that Saints team is littered with really high old contracts. But I do believe Tyler has success. He's a composed... He really reminds me a lot of Derek Carr. They drafted another Derek Carr. More mobile, but they drafted another Derek Carr. Then they went defense, Vernon Broughton, the defensive tackle from Texas. Then they went safety, Jonas Sanker from Virginia. And then this one I think is a really underrated pick, a pick that New Orleans has done multiple times through the years. Danny Stutzman from Oklahoma. He's been injured. He is a very smart linebacker. And I believe he really fills a need long-term for the Saints on defense. Then they drafted Quincy Riley from Louisville, the corner. Devin Neal, the running back from Kansas, which I think is an underrated pick. They let Jamal Williams walk. They've got Kendre Miller and now Devin Neal as backups. They got Matavo, the tight end from UCLA, and Fadil Diggs, the edge rusher from Syracuse. I give them an A-. They got a quarterback with Carr's injury status in question. They helped the defense significantly, and they got their offensive tackle to replace Ryan. You filled the needs you needed to. I believe that was a smart draft with what they had. The team is still going to struggle. Do not get me wrong. The team is still going to struggle. But how the draft went, I give them credit. I really give them credit. So those are my draft grades for the AFC and the NFC South. Tomorrow we close out the divisions, AFC, NFC West, and then we do our fantasy podcast on Friday, looking at all the players and where they could be. All right, guys, that is it. Wednesday is over. We are into the back half of the week. We got 2 days left before the weekend. For me, for the kids in our school, they only have one more day of school. They're out of school Friday. So, listen, make it the best rest of the week you can. Make it the best Thursday you can. Finish this week strong. Please subscribe, like the podcast. It helps me out a lot, and I deeply appreciate it. And I will see you guys tomorrow night with the final draft reaction podcast for the AFC and the NFC West. Until then, guys, for Sports Talk with Hawk, I am Hawk, and I'm out. Have a great evening.